Hello, it's Robbie Koenig, and you're listening to the Tennis Lifestyle Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Tennis Lifestyle Podcast. I'm Gianluca Sola. I'm sure you recognized the voice in the intro. He is my guest. It's Robbie Koenig. Robbie is obviously one of the most recognizable TV tennis commentators out there. It was a great conversation. I must start by saying that Robbie was very accommodating, very down to earth, and it was a pleasure chatting to him. Made things very easy. In our conversation, we talked about not only his broadcasting career, but also his professional career as a ATP player. He was very successful in doubles, and he won 5 titles, and also he played in many semis, both men's doubles and mixed doubles, Grand Slam semis. We also briefly talk about his coaching career. We talk about South African tennis. Obviously, being from South Africa, it was very interesting to get his views on South African tennis, on junior tennis, and also junior development. That was a great chat too. And then obviously we talk about his broadcasting career. He, as you know, is the voice that you hear in many channels all around the world. Currently, though, he is working for Amazon Prime UK. So unfortunately, we don't get to hear him anymore in South Africa. But he's a great commentator. He's a great commentator, analyst. He talks about, gives great insight into matches, players. He obviously knows them very well as well. So it's always interesting to listen to his commentary. And he combines that also with great enthusiasm and his famous one-liners. So the combination makes for a really nice tennis broadcast and listen. I always look forward to listening to Robbie when he's on TV. And apart from that, we also get to talk about his many passions. If you follow him on Twitter, where he's very active, you'll know that he talks a lot about not only tennis, but fly fishing, his huge love of 80s music, and many other things. So maybe you might get to know a little bit more about him in this conversation than in other interviews. Also, listen to at the end, we've got the rapid fire quiz. So that's always nice to listen to. Anyway, it was a great chat. I just want to add one thing in this conversation, in this episode. Unfortunately, my voice was breaking up in some questions. The good news is that I figured out what the problem is finally, so it shouldn't happen anymore. Having said that, Robbie's voice is 100% clear. You can hear everything he says very clearly. And obviously, you're listening to this episode because you want to listen to Robbie, not to me. So it still flows all right, and I think it's fine. You will understand the conversation without any problems. If you've got any suggestions or anybody that you think could be interesting that I could have on my podcast who's got an interesting background or tennis story, get in contact, get in touch with me. You'll find me on Twitter, but mostly on Instagram, tennis_lifestyle_podcast. That's my Instagram name. Also, you'll find me on tennisworldusa.org. My podcasts are also all on there. It's one of the most well-known tennis news websites, so you could find me on there as well. Well, anyway, that's it. Enjoyed the conversation. Ciao, ciao. How are you, Robbie?
Hey, Gianluca. Yeah, nice to have a chat about tennis, man. Something that's obviously very close to both of our hearts.
Before we get into our chat, did you watch the Laver Cup?
Yeah, I watched bits and pieces of it, Gianluca. It was also a Ryder Cup weekend as well, so they had a lot of attention. I'm a big golfer, so I love the Ryder Cup. The All Blacks were playing against the Springboks, so it was a very busy weekend. And given that I watch so much tennis all year round, um, I had to ration myself a little bit on the tennis so I could catch up on some of the other sports I love.
Yeah, it was a very, very busy weekend. But do you think maybe the Team Europe is too strong, or should they just continue the way it is?
Yeah, I mean, once you set the format out, you've got to stick with what you've got. I mean, this year has been particularly one-sided. I know Europe have won the last 3 as well, which I was part of, but they were a lot closer than this one. I think the scoring format usually lends itself to evening out the talent on either side of the pond, but it wasn't the case this time. And I think you could see the determination from the Europeans, especially the young guys, to put the rest of the world in their place. They did a pretty good job of that. And also, I think some of the picks like Nick Kyrgios, I think Nick is, by the sounds of things, close to getting ready to hang up his rackets. He hasn't played much tennis this year. He wasn't a force to be reckoned with like he was in previous Laver Cups. So, yeah, I think if anything, the rest of the world team wasn't nearly as strong as what it has been, or not as motivated as what it has been in previous Laver Cups.
Yeah. Do you think maybe, just before we go on to talk about you, but do you think maybe they should include women in the Laver Cup? Do you think maybe could even it out a bit, make it more interesting? Or
no, I think that's a fantastic idea. I've seen a few people bandy that idea around on social media, and I think that would be a great leveler. And I think, we're one of the very few sports in the world where we can get men and women playing on the same platform. And it seems that the wider tennis community loves it when it happens. So I definitely think that will be something that's in the pipeline, and perhaps especially so for the organizers after seeing such a one-sided affair this year. That's something that might come onto their radar in a greater way now, as you say, in order to even things out.
Can you tell us your tennis journey, where you were born, where you grew up, and how you got into tennis?
Yeah, I'm a Durban boy through and through. So yeah, I grew up in Westville in Durban, went to Westville Boys High School, which was fantastic times. We had the strongest tennis team in the country back in those days, the likes of Ellis Ferreira, who won multiple majors, Kirk Haygarth, who played a couple of years on the tour. We had Miles Wakefield, who played a couple of years on the tour as well. Roger Mills, who played college tennis in the States. So the level of tennis that I had around me growing up was fantastic. I was very blessed. And Durban was such a force to be reckoned with in interprovincials back in the day. So, those childhood memories growing up in Westville, playing tennis at the Westville Tennis Club were fantastic memories for me. But, I only came to tennis probably a little later. I only started to be a decent junior, I would say second year under 16. That's when I started to beat a few of the top guys in the country. And that's when, my love for the game grew even more off the back of that. I think those last 3 years of my junior career were pretty decent, certainly from a local point of view.
Okay. Was there a specific moment where you realized, okay, now I can make a profession out of tennis. I can make a living. I can become a professional tennis player. Was there a specific moment in time?
Yeah, I think there was. There was 2 challenger events that didn't get sanctioned, that were played at the end of the year in South Africa. This must have been at the end of, I think, 89 it was. And I was main draw. It became basically like 2 South African Opens back to back, but the money stayed. And the one in Joburg ended up being a disaster because my good friend Brad Summers and me had a mix-up, and he forgot to pick me up, or I forgot to tell him to pick me up on the way to Ellis Park, and I got defaulted from the tournament, which at that stage in my career was the biggest tournament I was going to play in the main draw, money-wise, everything. And I was devastated. I'd been training towards this. And then the following week, we had another big event in Cape Town, And in the quarterfinals there, I beat Christo van Rensburg, and Christo was, still a decent pro at that time. And I think when I beat him, that was like, okay, I might have a shot at being able to make a career out of this. And I would say if there was a light bulb moment, that was it, beating Christo. And I just remember that day playing incredible serve and volley tennis. I just couldn't miss. And I thought, well, if this is the level to be a top 100 player, meaning Christo, then, maybe I have got half a chance.
Okay. Were your parents happy you route, or did they support you?
Yeah, my parents were amazing. They were never full-on tennis parents. I mean, they hardly watched me play. They would drop me off and leave me to my own devices. Occasionally, they'd come and watch. They certainly never traveled overseas, but incredibly supportive. If I wanted to get up early before school to go to gym, my mom would always drop me off. But they were never helicopter parents. I think my mom in particular was quite surprised that I didn't take up an offer to go to college in America. I had two really good offers from Miami, University of Miami, and Pepperdine in California.
Oh, wow.
So, and I didn't take those up. I decided to go pro instead with, at the same time, the South African Tennis Union started their elite squads. And for the first time, I got drafted into a squad setup. So I think my mom was a little shocked. She came from a family that was highly educated. All my brothers and sisters are highly educated. So, I think it was a very strange one for her that I wasn't engaging in a proper job as far as she was concerned.
Okay. Yeah, you mostly played with other South Africans in doubles. David Adams, Marius Barnard, John Lafney de Jager, and so on. A question I've asked, I've actually had a few of them also on my podcast previously, and a question I've asked many of them is, why did South Africa produce, especially in your era, let's say 90s, beginning 2000s, so many top doubles players? There was a period, I think, where there was close to 15 top 100, if I'm correct. P.T. Norville, Chris Haggard, Wesley Moodley, and I'm missing many more. What's your opinion? Why was there so many good doubles players?
Look, I think serve and volley tennis was very much the norm when we were growing up. I still grew up in my early part of my career with wooden rackets, so serve and volley was big. I think we did so much of it. We didn't have clay courts to spend time at the back of the court. We played a lot of big tournaments up in Joburg, so that was even more suited to aggressive style of tennis. So again, serve and volley was often well suited to playing up in Joburg. So I think, and I also think the fact that perhaps we weren't super athletes like a Wayne Ferreira or a Marcus Andruska, that's kind of lent itself to covering half the court. So probably just a little easier for us at holes in our games. I think someone like Ellis Ferreira could have easily been a top 50 singles player if he had applied himself better physically, because talent-wise, being a lefty, he was an unbelievable player. I remember him winning the first set against Edberg when he qualified at Wimbledon one year. I think he won the first set against Edberg 6-1 out on court number 2, and he just blew Edberg away. And I mean, that was what Ellis was capable of doing, but he couldn't sustain it for more than 45 minutes an hour in singles.
Okay, very interesting. I mean, everybody's got pretty much mentions the fact of the serve and volley and playing in high altitude, and that, but also what you're saying physically is very interesting. And also, I think maybe a few people I spoke to also mentioned just at a certain point it became financially better to play doubles, especially coming from South Africa maybe, and than playing singles. I think maybe
very much the case. The same for me. I played singles for 7 years, and I think after 7 years of playing singles, I probably had about $40,000 or $50,000 to show for all my years on tour, which wasn't much. And then in '97, I remember when John Lafney and myself qualified at the US Open in in 1 week I qualified, and I think we made quarters that year, 97. I made more money in 10 days than I'd made pretty much my whole tennis career, and it was a no-brainer for me to go solely focus all my efforts on doubles, because I was getting a little older now. It's like the singles thing wasn't really working out for me the way I thought it might be. And I think it was a natural progression for somebody like me who still loved the game, absolutely loved the game, but just didn't have the weapons to do well in singles. But those weapons, serving volley and having good hands, translated well onto the doubles tour.
Also, was there or player that you found really tough to play against, or that you could never beat?
Yeah, certainly the Woodies. I think I played Todd and Mark 6 times. I lost to them 6 times, but definitely on 2 occasions, it might have even been 3 occasions, we had match points against them and lost. So it wasn't like they drummed us, but they always seemed to get the better of us in the tight moments. So, Todd and me do a lot of commentating together, and we're still good friends. And I always remind him the reason my kids had to go to public schools rather than private schools was because he cost me a lot of money on the tennis tour. But, I think as a team, they were pretty tough. I had a pretty good record against the Bryans. We played them 6 times. We beat them 3 times, John Luffney and myself. But as an individual player, I think it would be Daniel Nestor. Danny Nestor was the toughest individual person for me to play against. I thought that guy was so bloody talented, man. He could do anything, and he was just a nightmare of a matchup for somebody like myself who didn't have any weapons.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that before, Nestor. Okay, would you reckon he was one of the greatest doubles players ever, or who would you put right up there? Or pair?
I mean, as a pair, it's hard to argue against the numbers that the Bryans have posted. Their numbers are quite mind-boggling. Over, I think, 116, 117 titles together, more majors than anybody. And the worst thing about them is that they are just the nicest guys in the world. At least if they were arseholes, you could put them down, but they have been the most fantastic ambassadors for the game you could possibly imagine, Gianluca. And still to this day, they carry on. They carry on now.
Yeah.
They were heavily involved with the US Summer. They go around, they do clinics, and they're so talented musically. So they've got this gig whereby they do clinics at tennis tournaments for a couple of days, and then normally on one of the evenings they'll do like a Q&A with a nice party afterwards, where they are the musicians themselves playing songs, and and they still get paid pretty well for doing that stuff.
They also I heard they also hook up with Kevin Anderson sometimes, and because he's a pretty good guitar player apparently. Robbie, just to talk about South African tennis, in my opinion, it's not going through a fantastic moment, but what do you think why this is? And if the federation, do you think something can change or do something to improve the level, the standard?
Well, I'll start with the end of your question. I think they've done a decent job in the last 18 months or so with trying to get more international tournaments in the UK, so in South Africa. So I think they are trying hard, and it's not easy. Finances, the purse strings are quite tight at Tennis South Africa. Just of late, I know we've had a couple of futures events. We've got some grade A's and grade 1 and 2s coming up. So I think they've done a good job of hosting these events, which brings international players to our shores. Now, certainly when I was playing, we had lots of challenger events and satellites, as they were called back in the days. So we got to see the international level. And when you see that level firsthand, you realize how much harder you have to work and how much more disciplined you have to be in your training. So I think for many years we've lacked that. But then, that's purely a financial issue. And then, of course, traveling abroad is expensive on our South African rands. If you want to go and base yourself in Europe somewhere and travel from week to week, if you have a coach with you, you're paying all their expenses as well. It costs a lot. And that's the only way you find out about the level that is required is by playing against these better players. And that's the one tough thing about tennis, is that you are very much reliant on the people that you practice with day in and day out to improve. It's not like, say, golf, where you can go and hit 1,000 golf balls. I don't play against you when we play golf. I play against the course. So, you can, but whereas tennis, you're so reliant on that ball coming from a better player on the other side of the net to make you better. And the only way to do that is to travel and spend bucks doing it. And, that has been, it's always been a difficult thing for us guys in South Africa. Now, of course, there's tournaments in Africa, but the level's not the same in Africa as it is in Europe or the States. So, somebody like Lloyd Harris, that's where Anthony Harris has got to get a lot of credit. What him and Aitan Adams have done for Lloyd, finding sponsors, Ants pretty much dedicated his life to helping Lloyd and building a top 100 player. And now, and it takes an enormous amount of effort and sacrifice, and finding sponsors and money. And if you can't get it through Tennis South Africa, finding private sponsors. So I think that's certainly, and I think there's a lot of other sports now that interest kids. Tennis back when I was growing up, it was one of the sports to play. It was like, tennis, cricket, rugby, those were the main sports. Now you've got so many other sports taking attention away. Yes, so you lose those athletes to other sports. And I just think tennis has become a more global sport now. It's become tougher to break through. The level now is so much higher when I was playing. So, you've got more and more people that come from Eastern Europe or South America, that tennis is the only way of improving their lot in life. So they'll do anything. Some of us come from comfortable families, and our sacrifice isn't as great as someone who's got nothing else but tennis in their life. And you see that especially on the women's side of things. The Eastern Europeans, they are ruthless, man. Sometimes we're too fuzzy and warm here in South Africa.
That I can honestly say, I mean, I'm here close to Stellenbosch, and up to a few years ago, we had those free futures, and whenever these Eastern European women came, they were scary. They meant business. You could see it immediately.
Totally, absolutely.
No, you're a great answer. I mean, you covered everything there. If you had to give advice to a young junior, or a young top junior South African, that wants to go pro, and is very serious about it, what sort of advice would you give him?
I think the number one advice now, I've got an 18-year-old kid, so I've seen my boy Luke go through this process, and I think it's so important to work on the physical side from a young age. So movement patterns, strength. Don't be scared to play different sports that can cross-train you for tennis, but do things whereby it's going to help your tennis later on in life. I mean, there was a lovely video that was circulating after Emma Raducanu won the US Open, of her 7 years of age playing on an indoor court, hitting balls, and you just see the movement of the movement of her feet was unbelievable back then. For somebody like her, it might have been natural. She hits an open stance forehand, makes the crossover step to get back into the court, so light on her feet. I would definitely start working on the physical side. I think that's so important. And then, good technique, I think, is also important. And if you're lucky enough to play on a clay court, even if it's an artificial clay court, just get used to the sliding and the imbalancing that clay does to your game. Because when you're unbalanced, of course, the body's reaction to hit a good shot is to find balance. And that constant fine-tuning really helps your core and the strength in your legs. So it's not only about playing on clay because it's slow, but absolutely because of movement and balance. So if you can find, even if it's artificial clay, we've got one court up here in Hillcrest that we use a fair bit. but that's what I mean, obviously, if you've got the finances to send kids overseas, I think that's important, but I wouldn't rush to do it too young. I think if you've got the money, save it for when they like 16, under 16, under 18, rather than trying to do it too early. Worry about developing them early on. Don't worry too much about winning and losing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about here. I love talking about junior tennis more than professional tennis. But I think what you said about the physical, it's I don't want to make this too long, but the physical aspect of tennis, I've noticed, unfortunately, it gets like put aside completely in the junior. And your son, who I actually have seen in TSA tournaments and Tennis South Africa tournaments grow up, and does he want to follow in your footsteps?
Yeah, he'd love to go pro, but he's just right now, he's still got a lot of work to do. And, he hits the ball very well. I think he's another perfect example of someone who needs to work harder on the physical side of his game, the feet movement, being able to defend as well as attack. So, looking back now at everything I taught him and everything his coaches taught him, we definitely could have worked more on the footwork and the physical side of things, just to fine tune those footwork patterns. But I think he's certainly way ahead of where I was at this stage when I was 18. But he's got a couple of colleges that are interested in him, so maybe next year, August, September, he'll be heading to the States for a couple of years to do that. But we still got a bit of time between now and then. Send him out into the big wide tennis world and see how he can do before he decides to go to college in the States, if that's the way he wants to go.
Oh, okay, very interesting. Yeah, are you very pro college route?
Yeah, I think if you're not good enough to go pro straight away, which I think very few players are, I really believe it's an excellent way to continue to grow your tennis. And I think it also tells you a lot about the individuals, because those colleges, the setups is very comfortable in American colleges. They have spectacular training facilities. Obviously, you're on campus, you've got a lot of distraction with boys and girls. So I think those who aren't that serious about their tennis, they probably get involved, with partying and enjoying themselves at college, but there's nothing wrong with that. And I also think those that are serious about perhaps making a career one day, they use those 4 years as a major stepping stone to developing themselves as a player in a wonderful environment, and then using that as a springboard. So I think at the end of the day, it tells you a lot about the individual and how badly they want it. Because let me tell you, once you go from playing college tennis and being in a team environment where everything is taken care of for you, and you're training in these amazing facilities, when you have to go out and play, futures in some of these godforsaken places on the planet, it's not a lot of fun. I tell you what, in those early days, early years, sometimes trying to get the ranking up. So you better love what you do.
Yes, it can be very lonely. Yeah. Talk about your broadcasting career. Between your play, you also did a bit of coaching. Is that correct? How was that experience?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was with Wesley Moody for about 6 months, and he was playing doubles with Mahesh Bhupathi. So I worked with Mahesh for that entire year. And after 6 months, Wes split with me. He didn't want to use me anymore. And I quickly understood that, the coaching dynamic on tour is quite a fragile one. One day the coach wants you and he believes in you, and then, the player wants you and believes in you, and then, if he's not happy with the way results are going, or for whatever reason, you're sidelined and you're back on the carousel looking for another player.
I mean, recently Raducanu, I mean, that just came out of nowhere. No, that's amazing, in my opinion, that she just decided to split after winning a Grand Slam.
Yeah, no, I think I think the arrangement with Andrew Richardson was always a temporary one. It was always, that one was always until the end of the US Open. She just went with him to the US for that swing. So I think,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
for those in the know, aren't that surprised. Maybe they're surprised that she hasn't decided to continue with them, but I know he's got commitments with his own son. But you're just getting back to my point. I absolutely love the coaching side. And like you suggesting, I almost find the development of a young kid better than training a pro. The pro is the finished product. All you're doing is a little bit of fine tuning and polishing, and whereas trying to develop a player from a young age, that's proper coaching. Hey, it's the work is tireless, and sometimes it's not rewarding when you're coaching a young kid and you can't see them getting better for years. You're trying to do things, but let me tell you, when it starts to come together, and if you've done a half decent job, when it comes together quickly. And I had that experience with my own son. I try to teach Luke to do things that perhaps weren't conducive to him winning as a under 12, under 14 player. And yes. Plus he was still small, he was still growing. But once he got to second year under 16, first year under 18, kids that he'd been losing to, suddenly he didn't just beat them, but he left them, in the rearview mirror by a long way. And it's just suddenly everything comes together, and you realize that all those 8, 9, 10 years of hard work, that's what it's all about. And when it comes together, how good is it when it comes together? And I find that so rewarding. I think it's a lot easier to coach pros than it is to develop players from a young age. I think a lot of professional coaching might not be that technical. I think it's more mental, understanding the psychology of the sport, understanding the personality and psychology of the player that you're working with. I would almost say that is more important than the game, because a lot of these guys know how to play the game. But at the end of the day, you always got to remember, certainly when you're coaching pros, that a great player makes a great coach. And sometimes you can do a good job with a player and be a little unlucky, and then the next guy who jumps on as his coach is seen as the rock star because they've had good results. And I've seen a lot of coaches in my time being on tour, not only from my playing days but from my commentating days, who have been at the right place in the right time. And they get to have a profile that perhaps I don't think they might deserve, but just because they've been a little lucky. And there's other pros other coaches that I think have been incredible coaches, but the timing hasn't been there for them. And they've been a little unlucky, and as soon as the players left them, he's had success somewhere else. Coaching it's an interesting one. It's a very interesting one. And I definitely think it's one of those scenarios where it is certainly not one size fits all. So dependent on what the player. Sometimes the player just wants a good friend with them. They don't want someone to tell them, how fast their serve is, or how fast their forehand is, or too much technical information. They just want to feel good, because they know if they feel good, they'll play good.
I also think ultimately, this is again just my opinion, if the ultimate coach, in my opinion, is the coach who takes the child and puts the racket in his hand and brings him to number one in the world. I mean, there aren't that many, but I think he's gone through all those stages, and I mean, in my opinion, that is an incredible achievement. I spoke to one of my podcasts to Joffrey Porta from Mallorca, and he basically did that with Carlos Moya, and I think there's that really is, in my opinion, the ultimate coach. Don't know what you think about that.
No, well, I mean, so what about Richard Williams, right? I mean, how amazing is that he's got two girls that have been multiple Grand Slam champions and, world number one. Obviously, Uncle Tony, very similar sort of scenario with Rafa.
Yeah.
Mikhail Yushny is a very interesting case in point. I mean, didn't get to number 1 in the world, but he was with his coach
Was
since 10 years of age. Mikhail Yushny was
Boris
with
Boris
Hopkin.
Sopkin? Yeah. Yeah.
So I've got a lot of respect for those guys.
Yeah. Just to jump on your broadcasting career, I used to get you in South Africa on SuperSport, and it's been a year or two that we don't. So we're very upset. What happened?
Thanks, Gianluca. So I was working for ATP Media, who are the host broadcasters of all the Masters 1000 events, and South Africa tends to take what is known as the world feed. So that's why you guys would hear me all the time. But in the last 2.5 years, I have been contracted to work with Amazon in the UK. So that is only for the UK broadcast, for the tennis broadcast. So I only get heard mostly in the UK now, because that's who the bulk of my work is with. But then occasionally for, say, Australian Open, I'm back working for the host broadcaster. So you would hear me for, say, Australian Open, normally the US Open, not this year. This year was a little different. So those are 2 events where I do the world feed still. But yeah, that's the main reason why.
And Amazon Prime, can anybody in the world get Amazon Prime UK, or must you be in the UK to get it?
You must be in the UK to get it. So that's the television
I see.
rights. Television rights are geo-blocked. That's obviously why you pay for television rights in certain areas, so that nobody else can show it in that part of the world.
And is it right? I think I read somewhere that Amazon Prime UK, they've actually bought the rights to a lot of sporting events and much more tennis. Is that correct? Recently,
so they have got pretty much all the tennis now, except Wimbledon, French, and Australian Open. But I think they're going to acquire, certainly, I think the Australian Open and the French Open pretty soon. They've got all the men's and women's tour events, ATP and WTA events. They've got the US Open. So there's only about 3 tennis events that they don't have now. But from what I understand, they're going to be acquiring those in the years to come when Eurosport's contract runs out with the French Open and the Australian Open. That's what I believe. So yeah, and obviously with Emma doing well now, Emma Raducanu being in the UK space is going to be fantastic timing for them. Amazon's new to tennis, so it's good timing for Amazon right now.
Good time, yeah. Just to jump on another topic, but always to do with broadcasting. There's been a lot of talk recently or in the past year, especially if you take someone like Patrick Mouratoglou, about basically the tennis viewership. People, and this is his opinion, I actually don't know if it's true or not, but people are not watching tennis. The interest in tennis is declining. Especially the younger generation doesn't seem interested anymore. Something needs to be done. The format must be changed. Blah blah blah. Tennis matches are too long. I mean, I can continue forever. In my opinion, and I look at my kids who are 16 and a lot of the other kids around that age and younger. I kind of agree with that. I don't think the younger generation, it's used to a time span now that is much shorter. I don't think they can sit down and watch a whole match, not even a free setter. They might watch the highlights or the last few games or whatever. Do you think the ATP, the WTA, and maybe the broadcasters must maybe change something to bring more audience, more younger generation to view? Or is that actually not true, that actually the viewership is increasing? I'd just like to hear from you.
No, I think certainly I know in the UK, the average age of a viewer is 61 years of age. So, those would have been the people that grew up watching tennis in the late 70s, early 80s, when the sport was in its prime, when we had the likes of Borg, McEnroe, Connors, all at the peak of the game. And tennis was, it's one of the coolest sports in the world to play. It certainly was one of the most lucrative for an athlete to be part of. But I just think again, you're competing with so many other sports now. Some sports are just easier to play. It's easier for a kid to take up basketball and have a basketball and play pick up basketball with a mate. Tennis is a lonely sport, Gianluca? You're on your own. It's not a team sport. Yeah, I mean, we've just come off a US Open where we've seen the most number of 5-setters almost ever at an event. Everybody I've spoken to said it's one of the best US Opens they've watched in the last 25 years. So those advocating for 2 out of 3 sets at the majors, that puts a big dent in that argument. But listen, the viewing numbers, I don't know what the viewing numbers are now versus 20 years ago. You hear so many different numbers being thrown around and bandied around. When it's a big match, people tune in. That is the bottom line. When Nadal and Federer are playing together, and again, it depends on the geography of where the players are from. So, if a player's from a big country, like when Raducanu is playing in the finals, you've got Canada, viewership from Canada and the UK. It's massive in those countries. Our viewership in the UK was pretty big. They put it on free to air. But is it the time to go about changing the sport? I think we'd have to get to a point where the sponsorship and what people are prepared to pay for tennis rights gets worse. I think still now we're getting decent money for our tennis rights. I think it would have to get a lot worse before the authorities would consider changing the format of the sport. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, great. You're also famous in your broadcasting. You're very famous for your quote, Koenig-isms. Here are a few Koenig-isms that I'm going to tell you. Do you remember, and can you tell us the first time you said it? I'll start with the first one. Obviously, I can't do it the way you do it, but he's got those reflexes.
Yeah, I think that was Roger Federer somewhere, Gianluca. Yeah, it was an unbelievable point. I think both guys were at the nets. I can't even remember where it was. But yeah, it's funny that one caught on with a lot of people. I don't use it that much because you got to save it for a specific situation, and it doesn't happen all that often. But yeah, I don't know who these people are that put these videos together and stuff. That's where the internet boggles my mind even. And people put these videos together, and hey, I'm so glad it makes people laugh and they find it entertaining, because I think that's part of my job, right? Hopefully I want to get good information, but I'm in the entertainment business, and if they find it funny and entertaining, I'm really happy that I can make the viewing experience better for them.
And okay, the second one, it's tennis nearer the God.
Yeah, that came from I'll tell you where that came from. I was reading a book called but what's it called now? A Short History About just about everything. I can't remember who writes the book. A Short History About Everything. And it was a German gentleman who was he had a brilliant mind, Gottfried von Leibniz. And he said that about Sir Isaac Newton. He said he had a brain that was nearer the gods, that no mortal could approach. And when I was reading it, I just thought, what an incredible way of describing somebody who is so superior in their field. How can I adapt that to tennis? So that's kind of how I come up with the stuff. Because I'll tell you how it happened, Gianluca, is certainly in the early days of my commentating, I would I would listen to highlights, and I would be using similar sort of adjectives all the time. And then when you listen to highlights, because often people listen to highlights, especially with the advent of social media, it's just 2 or 3 minutes of amazing shots and clips.
Yeah.
And then I found myself saying, oh, that's unbelievable. That's an unbelievable forehand. It's an unbelievable backhand. It's an unbelievable smash. It's an unbelievable get. And I just thought, hang on, I need to vary the way I describe the same thing, because sport by nature is repetitive. So that's how I started to think, okay, how can I describe the same thing in 30 different ways? And then it just kind of became a progression from that. And then, I take a lot of inspiration from famous actors and actresses and famous athletes. I'm a big fan of Mark Twain. I thought the guy was an absolute legend. He's so funny. So that's kind of where I get my inspiration from, and musicians as well. Lines and great songs that if you mention a line in a song, if it's a song that everybody probably has heard, they might recognize it and think, hey, okay, I can see where Robbie's got that one from.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to say, you make to be honest, to commentate on a match of tennis, something that already is going to last longer than an hour, I think it must be very difficult, because you can't just say you did a great backhand or a great forehand for an hour or 2 hours and people are going to fall asleep. So, I mean, what you're doing, obviously, I think is amazing, because it's very entertaining, and I think people want also entertainment, not only statistics and stuff like that. One of my personal favorites is he's given him the frozen rope. That one,
So obviously that comes from golf. That's often you hear golfers talking about a 2-iron that was a frozen rope. It's a ball that doesn't deviate on its path. So I think that's an easy one to take from golfing commentary and use it in tennis commentary. It translates almost identically. But
one-liners are not really always spontaneous. You kind of think them through beforehand. Am I correct? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, when I come across something that I think is fun, it's a great way of describing a situation, and then I might try and adapt it to a tennis situation. But for me, the key when I'm commentating is to deliver it as if it was off the cuff. I think that's the skill, right? Rather than it sounding, prepared. And that's something I've got better at doing over the years. And I think it's important to wait for the right scenario to use something, because then it's a lot more impactful. I remember in the first couple of years when I was trying to introduce that way of commentating, if I found something good, I was just so keen to use it. But you kind of crowbarred in there, and you listen back to it and you think, shit, that wasn't great. I should have been more patient, because as it would have it, 1 or 2 games later, the perfect scenario comes up, right? And so, you just learn patience. Sometimes, I've had things I've written down, I haven't used it for a year or 2, and then the perfect situation comes up, and then it complements the tennis nicely, rather than, taking away from the tennis.
Yeah. Also, another one I like is your attitude determines your altitude. I think that one's one that I use often also with my kids.
Yeah, and I think anything in life, right?
Yeah. Finally, Robbie, you seem, through social media at least, you seem to be a very passionate person. You've got lots of interests and hobbies, by the looks of it. Some, I must say, are great, but some I'm not too sure of, and I'll speak to you about them just now. But let's start with the good ones. You seem to be quite into fly fishing.
Yes, very much so. I'm going to be doing that till the day I fall over, hopefully. Just the beauty. There's a saying that trout fishermen often use, and they say trout don't live in ugly places.
Okay.
It just takes you to the most beautiful places on this planet.
Okay. Where's the most beautiful place you've been to do fly fishing?
Probably New Zealand and Idaho. Montana,
Okay.
Idaho border, yeah.
Okay. Have you ever been to Franschhoek, close to where I am?
Franschhoek, I've been, but I didn't know there's fly fishing there.
Is there no fly fishing? Okay. I remember going 10 years ago.
Oh, okay, in Franschhoek. Okay, well, that's good. I know Luke's got some tennis tournaments down there, so now you've got me interested. I'll have to have a look if there's any rivers in the area next time I'm in Stellenbosch.
Yeah, no, I might be wrong. I just remember going somewhere 10 years ago. I mean, I'm not a fly fisher, but I might be wrong, but you can let me know. The other thing that you really like is you must let us know what kind of setup do you have at home?
Believe it or not, I've got an Italian machine, small one, not one of those big fancy ones. It's called a Gaggia. I got it in the UK when I was living there, and it does a fantastic job. But I don't drink a lot of coffee, Gianluca. That's what might surprise you. I probably only have about, maybe five or six coffees a week, flat white normally. So I like going out to have a coffee, and rather than having it at home and going through the process. I think I've had maybe one day when I'm older and a bit more wiser, I'll have my own machine at home. But I do like the process of going out and seeing the different coffees out there when you go to countries, and Australia has Melbourne, incredible coffee culture, New Zealand as well. South Africa's coffee culture is right up there with the very best I've come across too.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it's another one which I'm not sure of. I think I've saw it on your social media, but correct me. Do you happen to be a Liverpool football fan?
Yeah, I am. I'm not hardcore though. I'm not like some of these guys that you meet who will have a fight with you about it because they're very tribal. It's just happened that when we were in the UK, my eldest son started school there, and obviously the kids speak about it a lot, and they kept asking him who's his team, and I said, well, I've never really had a team. So he said, who should our team be? So I said, well, there's this guy called Steven Gerrard. He plays the game hard. He's a hell of a competitor. I like the way he does it. And he plays for Liverpool. So we say they're our team. And he said, yes, Dad, let's make them our team. So that's basically how I became a Liverpool fan.
Okay. And then lastly, the one that I'm very not sure about is your love of 80s music.
Why? Why? So what is the best music in your opinion?
No, I think I know I'm from, so I went through the 80s as well, but
yeah,
I'm not sure. I don't think it's actually a very good decade for music. I don't know, but you seem to really enjoy the music from the 80s.
I think I might have to give you a yellow card for this, Gianluca. I think you might be getting a yellow card, man. Shit. What a generation. You got some of the greatest rock bands. None of this bullshit synthesizing, music layovers. I mean, there were synthesizers did come into it, with a couple of the bands. But these days, no one's got any talent, man. Everybody does everything else for them, and you record your voice over there, and then they mix it over here. I just love the fact, those rock bands selling out stadiums back in the day, AC/DC and Aerosmith and the Stones. I mean, you've got some of the greatest rock bands ever.
Okay, well, but that's not really the 80s, the Stones and
I mean, they started in the 70s for sure. They started in the 70s, but they spilled over into, well, they've been around for 5 decades.
Okay, no, well then I agree with you, but when I think of the 80s, it's more like how can I say, like Culture Club, and which are not bad, but
Yeah, that wouldn't be my top pick. Yeah, Eurasia, AHA, OMD, but the rock bands I used to love as well.
Okay.
So Guns N' Roses, a little bit of head banging every now and then. When I'd lost a match and there was a player party going on, I wouldn't mind a bit of Quiet Riot. So yeah.
Okay. All right. No. Okay, you've turned this around. You've okay. Now I understand it much better. Yeah. No. So what are your three top picks of 80s bands? Do you have three or in particular or that you go to?
I mean, yeah, I know what you're saying. Some of those bands started before them, but I guess they produced music during that 80s era that I thought was just unbelievable. For me as a rock band, Aerosmith were one of my all-time favorites. I just loved their music. They were incredible. I think some of the stuff that Elton John did, I'm the baby of four kids, so I grew up with older brothers and sisters, but I thought the guy was a musical genius. Guns N' Roses, incredible.
Okay, maybe even Queen. I don't know. They were probably 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, Queen was good, but they weren't. I didn't listen to them a lot, as much as some of the other stuff out there. But I would say probably Aerosmith would be probably one of my top picks. Elton would definitely get a mention. And then coming in third from the 80s, now you're putting me on the spot here. Somebody like AHA would have been huge for me back in the day. I loved them. But listen, don't get me wrong. I love all kinds of music, and I appreciate the talents of the really good ones these days, like Chris Martin from Coldplay or Ed Sheeran. For me, those guys are proper musicians, right? They just they've been around for decades. They're no one-hit wonders. Although there were some good one-hit wonders in the 80s.
Well, they anyway, I don't want to keep you too long, Robbie. Thank you very much. Just the last thing here. Where are you off to next? How does the rest of the year look?
The rest of the year looks like I'll be going to London because we're commentating everything out of the studios there. Hasn't been much traveling just because of COVID.
Okay.
So I'll do Paris, Bercy, and then I will do the World Tour Finals, which is going to be in Turin this year.
Okay. Oh, you're going to do it all out of a studio in London?
For now, it looks like it, unless something changes. But I think if there's going to be travels like there were before COVID, that'll start next year where we'll do a lot more on site.
Okay. Can I finish? If you have 10 minutes, I always end my podcast with a rapid fire quiz. You can elaborate if you want to, keep it very short.
Okay, let's go. Rapid fire.
Are you ready? Okay. What is your first memory of tennis?
Playing at Westridge Park in some junior events there as a youngster, as well as my Max Plum McEnroe tennis racket.
Very nice. Me too. I had that one. Define what type of player you are to somebody who's never seen you play.
I would be a serve and volleyer who would junk players as much as they could, try and unsettle them as much as they could by rushing to the nets and basically being a pain in the arse.
Best shot?
Volleys.
Tennis idol growing up?
Bjorn Borg and Johnny McEnroe were right up there in my early days. I think I've got to give Stefan Edberg an honorable mention.
Okay. Currently, favorite player, male and female?
It's so different when you're older. You have a completely different perspective on it now. You don't idolize these guys because you see them week in and week out. But obviously for the way that Roger plays the game, being a single-hander myself, if I could play the game like anybody, it would be him. But if I had the mental strength of somebody, it'll probably be Novak, right? If I had the tenacity of a player, I'd want a bit of Nadal. So yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
you know,
well,
we've had a generation of players now that's just mind-boggling when you think about what they've done. But
yeah.
I think aesthetically, no one's played the game like Roger, have they?
Well, the next question, I'm going to put you on the spot. List the big three from your favorite to least favorite.
Yeah, I don't have a least favorite because I appreciate everything that they've done, right? You know,
Okay.
we get asked that a lot, you know, who's the best, who's the greatest. They're great for different reasons, and I think that's fantastic. I think if they were all exactly the same, you know, if the best three players all played like Roger, we wouldn't appreciate Roger for what he is. You know, Nadal himself has said if he could play the game and look as good as Roger was, it would save his body so much more than the style that he plays. And I think that's what makes Rafa so, you know, enjoyable. And then you've got this guy who is just like a hybrid of the two, who's so smooth and just so devoted to his craft. And Novak, you know, if you wanted a list, probably it would be Roger, Novak, Rafa.
Okay. It can even be a club match or a junior match. Doesn't have to be Grand Slam final.
Yeah, there's two matches that I always mention to everybody for different reasons, but quality-wise, sure. The 2017 Australian Open final when Federer beat Rafa, commentating on that one, that was unbelievable just to be part of that. I think that would be right up there. And also commentating when Andy Murray won Wimbledon for the first time when he beat Djokovic. Because I played against Andy from a young age. You know, I played doubles against him when he was 15 or 16 years of age. He'd got a wild card into the Nottingham ATP event, and you could see back then this kid was unbelievable, man. His backhand was world class, even as a 16-year-old. And it was so nice to see the progression. And I'd followed the progression from when he was that young till, you know, when he came on the tour, and then, you know, all those Grand Slam finals that he lost, and then finally winning the US Open, then finally winning Wimbledon for the first time. And I remember I was commentating on radio for that.
Do you think he's actually going to be able to? He says his aim is to get into the top 10 again. Do you think he's being maybe a bit optimistic there, or?
You know, these guys don't think like we do, Gianluca. There's a reason why they've achieved what they have achieved. It's because they don't have these limiting beliefs. Now, for me, I would say it's going to be very difficult for Andy to get back. If I had to bet all the money I had, I'd say no, he won't be a top 10 player again. But, you know, I never thought Emma Raducanu was going to win the US Open. I thought she had no way she was going to win. I thought she did unbelievably well to get to the semifinals. But, you know, they have a different mindset to us. You know, they just, the amount of self-belief that they have is, it's very difficult for the average sports fan to comprehend that. I know what it felt like to win a couple of rounds at a tour event. I felt like I was walking on air. And these guys are winning the biggest tournaments week in and week out for decades. Can you imagine the level of belief and self-confidence that they have?
The best tournament in the world?
Wimbledon.
Okay. Your favorite
best tour event would probably be a close between Rome and Indian Wells. Very close between those two.
Oh, okay. Those are nice tournaments. Yeah, I'd love to go to Indian Wells. Yeah, I've been to Rome many times, but yeah, that's lovely. Your favorite surface?
Hard court.
Hard court. Back when you played, what did you use and tension?
Wilson. I've been a Wilson guy for most of my career, and I played with VS Natural Gut, Babolat Natural Guts, and I would string that at 58 pounds.
Okay. What's the most amazing you've ever had? Bit of a difficult one, but.
No, 2017. I tell you, we just done that final with Federer and Nadal, and I've known Roger
Okay.
for many years. I played against him twice in doubles, and obviously South African connection, blah blah blah. And I remember commentating on that final with another Aussie friend of mine, Josh Eagle, and we had gone to thank everybody in the broadcast compound, and we'd walk back underneath the stadium to basically get our stuff and leave. And as we were coming back under the stadium in Australia, all these security guys were starting to come around the corner, and it was just telling everybody to move out the way because Roger was coming through with his trophy, and he was going to do all his major media appearances after he had just won. So we stepped back into this corridor just to get out the way. And as Roger came around the corner, he had these 10, 12 security guards around him. And he looked to the right where Josh and I were standing, and he saw us, and he stopped and he walked over to us. And Josh gave him a high five. And I said to him, I can't believe you won it. I said, hey Roger, I cannot believe you won it. And he points at the trophy, and he goes, what do you think? What do you think, China? Everybody calls me China. It's a South African thing. What do you think, China? And I said to him, I can't believe you won it, Roger. He goes, yeah, it's one of the sweetest victories I've ever had. And just in that, it was such a cool moment where he just came over to Josh and I. He had no business needing to do that, but that's the kind of guy that Roger is. He understands everybody's role within the tennis world, and he probably knew that we were doing his match, and just those little moments like that, very cool.
Fantastic, yeah. For the listeners, because I've got a lot of sort of international listeners, that China is sort of slang in South African for friend or buddy. Am I right?
For buddy, yeah. The equivalent in Australia would be mates.
Mates, yeah.
So China.
Yeah, China. You have to book a restaurant and invite 3 players. They can be from any era, male or female. Which restaurant and which players do you invite? I mean, which restaurant do you book and which players do you invite?
Sure. I'm not I like fancy food, but maybe somewhere nice in Cape Town. I've had a couple of nice, I can't even remember the names of the place. In Constantia, it was an unbelievable place. We had a meal there that was out of this world. The name slips me for a second.
Wine farm, maybe? Wine farm or not?
No, it wasn't a wine farm. It was the guy who used to be at the test kitchen, and then he moved over to...
Okay, I think I know which it is. But
Constantia. It was spectacular. So whatever that place is, probably there, beautiful view. And probably McEnroe, Martina Navratilova, and Jimmy Arias. Arias. Yeah, Jimmy Arias has got the best tennis stories I've ever heard of anybody. But I think the other two could certainly entertain us as well. I think Johnny Mac, maybe if I was going to substitute Jimmy for somebody, maybe Borg. But Borg doesn't speak much, man. Doesn't say too much of Bjorn. He just looks good. He just touches his hair a couple of times, and when you look as good as he does, you don't have to say much.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Jimmy Arias. What's your favorite food?
Probably Italian or Thai. I really love those. I like a lot of different foods, so I love a good salad.
Okay.
Good salad with a little bit of everything in it. That always does me well. But I eat pretty much anything. I did 1 year of the army back in the day when we had to do military service, so that taught me to eat anything.
Okay. Are you superstitious? A lot of tennis players are.
I think I was mildly superstitious, but no, I wouldn't say majorly superstitious, no.
Okay. How many hours on average do you sleep?
Let me tell you something right now. It's a good question. Probably a minimum of 8 or 9. if there was a world championships of sleeping, I would definitely be one of the top 2 seeds, without a doubt. I'd be the equivalent of Novak or Roger or Rafa in that department, because I can sleep on a poppy, Gianluca.
Oh, really? Okay.
I can wake up and go back to sleep time and time again. I'm very blessed in that department.
Okay, we're learning some nice things from you. I like this. What's your favorite country?
New Zealand.
Favorite city?
Rome.
Most difficult sport in the world?
Yes, without a doubt.
Okay. How will tennis look like in 2050, about 30 years from now?
I think the players will be bigger, stronger, faster. But I do hope, the sport and those in charge of the sport do more to allow players with a different skill set to prosper. Right now, the game is all about baseline tennis. It's so difficult to become a serve and volleyer. And I grew up in an era where you had great baseliners playing against great serve and volleyers. And I think that matchup was what made tennis popular for a big part of the time that I was growing up. So I would like to see the courts quickened up and give those with a different skill set a chance to compete against those who have the benefit of string racket technology. They've even got the benefit of the court surfaces being so slow these days. So the one thing you can control being the court surface, let's change that up.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely.
A shot,
and you can give me a name or whatever comes into your mind. Serve.
Sampras.
Return.
Djokovic.
Forehand.
Federer.
Backhand.
Nalbandian.
Interesting one. Volley.
Rafter.
Drop shot.
Benoit Paire.
Move.
Djokovic.
Mental toughness.
Djokovic.
That was a close one with Nadal, I think. Or
Absolutely. But I think what's been so difficult for him is having to fight off 2 of the greatest for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, what Nadal's done on a clay court it's unfathomable, right? I was going to put out a tweet the other day asking people what is likely to be, which record is more likely to be broken. Somebody winning the French Open 13 times, or Monica Seller's record of winning 8 majors as a teenager. I mean, which do you think would come first? Yeah, I mean, that for me, that's also a lot of people forget that.
Yeah. Sorry, last 2. Touch, feel.
McEnroe.
And last one, presence, aura, presence.
Roger.
Ask yourself a question and ask.
Sure.
Doesn't have to be serious.
Yeah. I think my so Robbie, what is your favorite dessert? And I'd probably have to say I do like sweet things. I've got a sweet tooth. A New York style baked cheesecake.
Okay. Very interesting. Nice. Robbie, that's it. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. Fantastic. Keep well, and thank you very much.
Only a pleasure, Gianluca. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's it.